jail for, okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. Peacefully. Fed. Peacefully. Okay, folks. Grab the word. As soon as the president's done speaking, we go to the Capitol. The Capitol's this direction.
The story of the mystery man, Ray Epps, featured in Representative Massey's video above, is in fact far more shocking than even the congressman implies in the hearing. It's a story so strange and so scandalous at every turn that it threatens to shatter the entire official narrative of the Capitol breach. And still, it exposes yet another dimension of provocative federal involvement in the so-called insurrection of January 6th. Hi guys, this is CJ with the Patriot Nation podcast, and we are talking about Ray Epps, the Fed-protected provocateur who appears to have led the very first January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. In a House hearing on Thursday, Representative Thomas Massey, a Republican from Kentucky, questioned Attorney General Merrick Garland about a mysterious man called Ray Epps. This man instructed protesters to enter the U.S. Capitol on January 5th, and he later shepherded crowds towards the Capitol on January 6th. Representative Massey goes on to say that he questioned Attorney General Merrick Garland about whether there were federal agents present on January 6th and whether they agitated to go into the Capitol. Attorney General Garland, of course, did not answer. Matter of fact, he refused to answer.
As far as we can find, this individual has not been charged with anything. You said this is one of the most sweeping investigations in history. Have you seen that video or those frames from that video?
So as I said at the outset, one of the norms of the Justice Department is to not comment on impending investigations, and particularly not to comment about particular scenes or particular individuals.
Can you tell us, without talking about particular incidents or particular videos, how many agents or assets of the federal government were present on January 6th, whether they agitated to go into the Capitol, and if any of them did?
So I'm not going to violate this norm of the rule of law. I'm not going to comment on an investigation that's ongoing.
Why would Attorney General Merrick Garland not imply or even give a hint that they are investigating Ray Epps? They say they want to leave every stone unturned, yet Ray Epps seems to have motivated and inspired a number of protesters to breach the Capitol building. He seems to be directly responsible for that unlawful act. However, why did the FBI take him off of their most wanted list? Why has this man been allowed to walk free? It appears that many on left-wing news sites are starting to admit and say that Ray Epps is an FBI operative, but he was one there to observe things. However, if you look at the video footage and listen to his words, you will see that Ray Epps didn't simply observe things. If he was there to observe things, he could have stood there with a sign, just shaking and nodding his head, reporting back to others as he maybe would do as an observer. However, he, on the other hand, was inspiring people, giving them the idea to breach and break into the Capitol building. This is a far different story. Any other individual, you would think in normal circumstances, would be investigated and also would be held as a suspect in the breach of the Capitol building.
And then, 20 seconds before the very first breach of the Capitol, this individual, Ray Epps, whispers into someone's ear. Then 20 seconds later, we have the very first breach. So he's everywhere. There was a New York Times piece that had come out that essentially ran cover for the feds, but did it in a way that was counterproductive. It amplified the name of Epps, which wasn't convenient for the feds after Revolver had reported that the feds were likely involved in 1/6. But what it did do is said that Ray Epps was acting alone. And as you can see in this Revolver.news piece, Ray Epps seemed to be coordinating with a number of people in this initial breach, and many of those people also remain curiously unindicted. But perhaps the most damning thing, the FBI scrubbed Epps's face from their database, from their public database, just a day after Revolver ran a report on his fellow Oath Keeper, Stuart Rhodes, who is also unindicted. So there's just a cast of curious characters unindicted.
I find it very interesting regarding two of the three most impacting events on our nation and on the world over the last 2 years, and two of those three seem to have had a much larger and stronger counter response than their initial effect.
This arbitrary and unconstitutional overreach has destroyed my career. I had a good paying career, paying my bills, earning good money. Now I'm subject to trying to find a job for $20 an hour because I will not be able to get my job back.
Think about it this way. You have COVID-19, which was pushed to us as a pandemic that was extremely deadly, they say. However, it seems that the statistics do not add up to the fear-mongering that was pushed forth by the mainstream media and many government institutions. And then you have the response or reaction to COVID-19 being much more extensive and much more reactive, much more damaging than the virus itself, restricting rights, breaking down economies, shutting things down, cutting people's rights, threatening to fire them if they do not get vaccinated by a vaccine that is not even 100% effective to protect them against a virus that is only approximately 0.1% deadly. It is quite odd. Then you go on to the Capitol riot, as they say. And this particular riot, it seems that the response to the riot is much greater than what happened during the riot itself. You can look at any number of Antifa-motivated or BLM-motivated riots that took place over the last 2 years, and so many of them had more death, more destruction, that is financial destruction, more than the Capitol riot had.
The Black Lives Matter movement is linked to more than 9 in 10 riots across America.
May 26th to June 8th last year, Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots caused over $2 billion in property damage. It's estimated here at the Capitol, it was on January 6th, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. The Major Cities Chiefs Association said that during the 10 weeks following George Floyd's death, there were 574 riots, declared riots, with violence and other criminal activity. That's 57 per week. Americans lost their lives. There were severe injuries, including over 2,000 law enforcement. And yet the Democratic Party to this day has yet to even hold a single hearing on the BLM and Antifa riots.
However, the response to the Capitol riot has been extensive. That is, the jailing and the holding of people who have not been on trial yet. These people are being held against their will for an extended period of time. Many of them committed no acts of violence. And the response, again, appears to be much greater than the initial action itself.
But I'm troubled that reportedly dozens of individuals from the January 6th riots have been held without bond in solitary confinement for up to 23 hours a day. Even Senator Elizabeth Warren has said that solitary confinement is a form of punishment that is cruel and psychologically damaging. She went on and said that in relation to those involved in January 6th, that we're talking about people who haven't been convicted of anything yet. Even the ACLU expressed similar concerns, saying that solitary confinement is torture.
The study defines riots as demonstrations in which any demonstrator engages in violently disruptive or destructive acts as well as mob violence.
It makes you wonder even about the incident involving George Floyd. And are these incidents being used for political momentum and political control over the people. It's so interesting when you think about these ideas of conspiracy theories, because in the past, I was very much against conspiracy theories. I remember years ago in the 90s, they would talk about chemtrails and they would talk about fluoride and all sorts of things. And I'm not saying I believe in one way or the other, but I'll be honest with you, the black helicopters, etc., that they would talk about flying around the country, I tended to not be interested in that because I found them to be fairly fictional in their nature. Was I right? Was I wrong? Well, all I can say is they were not convincing. However, some of the things going on now are much more convincing because, one, we have the technology, and two, we have the means to do it, and three, we have a very immoral, angry, and aggressive and motivated opposition in the left-wing socialist movement in this country. It'll be interesting to see what goes on next in this ongoing saga. Stay tuned, Patriots. I look forward to talking to you next time, and thank you for joining us for the Patriot Nation podcast. Take care. God bless. Talk to you next time.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.